This is Kristen from naturalbirthandbabycare.com, and I'm going to talk to you about baby's position in the womb today and what the different positions mean with this baby model here. So the biggest things that you probably hear are breech and vertex. You probably already know what breech is because there's so much controversy about breech babies, but that means that baby's butt is down and the head is up. A vertex baby is head down. So vertex baby means baby's head is down and the butt is up. When we're looking at breech babies, and especially if you're considering a vaginal breech birth, the most important thing is to find a provider who's experienced and willing to try a vaginal breech. But your baby's position also matters. So if you have a vaginal breech baby, there are basically 3 different positions he or she can be in. One is a complete breech, which means that your baby's legs are crossed like this in tailor sitting or Indian style position, depending on what it was called in your region when you were growing up. But baby is like this. That's a good position to try for a vaginal breech birth. Like this is a frank breech, which means that your baby's feet are straight up, kind of like the pike position used for professional diving. This is also a good position for a vaginal breech birth. If your baby is more like this, or halfway in one or in another, or the feet are down, or if they're in a funny kneeling kind of position, that's called an incomplete breech. And that is not as good of a candidate for a vaginal birth because the baby's feet will come down first. With a complete breech or a frank breech, what comes down first is the bum and the hips, which is a very similar diameter to the baby's head. So it opens the cervix in the same way, and then the baby's head comes down. And so baby comes down, and usually the feet will release, but it's after the baby's already through the cervix. They kind of release at the perineum, the same place that baby's head would crown. So those are important positions to know if you have a baby who's persistently breeching and you want to consider a vaginal breech birth. What we really want to see is that babies are going to go head down. Now, another position babies can be in is transverse. In European countries, and I think also in Australia and New Zealand, this is called the lateral position. In the United States, we call it transverse. Oftentimes at your 18 to 20 week ultrasound, baby will be transverse, or will be breech, or will be diagonal, or something weird like that. That's okay. We're really looking at what position is baby in starting about the beginning of the 3rd trimester, and that's when we really want to start encouraging babies to be head down. Now I'm going to tell you, you probably hear, or if you've looked at your chart, acronyms for your baby's position, and you hear about anterior and posterior. So an anterior baby means that your baby's back is to your front, and posterior means that your baby's back is to your back. So back towards your belly button is anterior, back towards your spine is posterior. And you will hear acronyms to describe your baby's position. Those acronyms, when your baby is head down, always have an O in them because they measure from the occiput, which is the back of baby's head, which is usually in line with the back. So we'll go around kind of the clock of the way that babies are. So this would be OA, which means occiput anterior. Then LOA means left occiput anterior. So when you hear left and right, it means to your left or your right. So this baby is angled slightly to the left and occiput anterior. This is LOT, which means left occiput transverse, so directly to your left side. LOP means baby is angled slightly towards your spine on the left. This is directly OP, so baby's occiput is directly posterior towards your spine. This is ROP, so now we're on the right. Baby's head is pointing towards the right posterior. This is ROT, so baby is directly facing to the side on your right. And this is ROA, right occiput anterior. And then we get back to occiput anterior. When we're thinking about birth and visualizing the positions that we want our baby to be in, the best positions to start labor in are occiput anterior, LOA, or left occiput anterior, or LOT, left occiput transverse. If the baby is ROA, he or she will probably rotate this way for birth. But if baby is ROT, ROP, OP, or LOP, they usually want to rotate all the way this way for birth. So it can add time to labor because the baby has to have time to do all that turning. So most babies start LOT or LOA, and so they just do a pretty quick rotation. So that's kind of what we want to encourage and what we want to visualize when we visualize babies turning. If your baby happens to be breech, they can also do those measurements, but they measure from the sacrum, which is like the bony plate right at the base of your spine. So it will be like LSA, left sacrum anterior. And then another thing that you might hear, you don't hear it as much with a head down baby, but you might hear also about what position is the baby's head in. So if the baby is looking straight ahead like this baby is, this is actually called a military attitude because we think about soldiers looking straight ahead. If it's like this, tucked down, chin to chest, this is a well-flexed head, so we say that the head has flexion. If the head is like this or like this, then we call that extension. So what we really want in every position is for baby's head to be tucked in. But it's especially important if your baby is persistently breech and you want to have a vaginal breech birth, because you want to have a baby whose head is well flexed and not extended. If your baby is breech at term or has an extended head at term, they may try and do an external version to turn baby. And it's a good thing to talk with your care provider about, what's my baby's position. And usually if your baby is breech, an ultrasound will tell you what kind of breech are they, is their head flexed or extended. Most babies really want to have their heads flexed. So when you're picturing getting ready for birth, and I like to picture my baby in the womb as things are getting close. I don't know if it really influences the baby. Maybe it's all just silly woo-woo, but I've done it every time, and I think it helps. So you want to picture, let me see if I can get the knees right. Often their knees are like this. And so you picture baby really tucked into a little ball like this or like this on this side, because that's probably the ideal position for babies to be in, and it's a good thing to visualize as you visualize your baby.